We are here today on August 29th, 2024 at the Gordon Martin home. And we are here for the purpose of getting some information from Gordon about the schoolhouse and the Pioneer Homes, the Pillager Homestead building that we have at the Nisswa Area Historical Society. So Gordon, you were talking a little bit about how long your family has been here. Could you tell us about that again?
Yeah, my granddad and grandmother, they came from Albert Lea, Minnesota in 1897, and they had 11 children here. And so it was about 3 years later, they settled on a farm north here a couple miles, and the railroad had owned this land right here, Section 15, and it was all cut over timberland. There were no buildings on the place here. So Grandpa and Grandma moved here, and the first building they built was out here. And then they built a barn, actually built two different barns and two different houses. This house we're sitting in right now, as a matter of fact, this house was built in 1918. Grandpa died in 1917, and when Grandpa died, he'd started Motley with his steam engine, and he would thrash all the way from Motley up to Leader through this country. He would thrash stacks. He was shot out in the fields, and then when he got here, he would probably run the steam engine and stack thrash the rest of the way to Leader, and he never really got home till about Thanksgiving time.
So what was the main source of income, or what was the main work that was done by your grandparents?
My grandpa?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a full-time farmer. He served on the town board, and he served on the creamery board. In fact, he was the first president of the Motley Creamery Association when that was organized in 1909. He was the first president, and he was the largest producer for several years.
And how many milk cattle did you have?
Grandpa, there was 24 stalls in the barn, but I'm sure he had them all full. When I bought the farm here, I bought the farm in 1958, and there was room for 8 horses in the barn, 8 horse stalls actually, and there was 24 stanchions for the milk cows, and then there was a big shed on the backside for the young stock calves.
So is this the same barn?
This one out here is the same barn. Yes, he built this barn in 1910, the one that's out here now.
Gosh.
And his first barn was in back of the big shed here. That was his first barn, and the house still sits. His original house still sits over here.
Were they log buildings? Did anybody build with logs at that time, or was it
Yes,
lumber?
yes. In fact, you can talk to Bruce about that. When Bruce built his house, I thought he was overbuilding. And so at the time, he said, well, just remember, when Grandma built this house in 1918, all the neighbors were living in log houses, and that was the absolute truth. Right to the north here, that house just got taken down by Larry Jordahl here about 4 years ago. That was a log house. And there was the log houses down here over on Pizzas. That was a log house. Wow. All the houses, and the Anderson house just got taken down last summer.
Oh, gosh.
They were all log houses, yes.
Amazing. So what kind of cattle did your dad milk? What breed of cattle were they? Holsteins?
No, Grandpa he bought a herd of registered jerseys.
Wow.
And he had registered jerseys along with, pretty much registered jerseys. Yeah. He got them through the bank in Motley from J.M. Smith. J.M. Smith was a registered breeder.
Who were some of the other early settlers? Did Grandpa talk about them?
Yes. When Grandpa came, there was Pizzas, and there was several Pizzas in this area that had came from Esterville, Iowa. Actually, there was 5 Pete's brothers. And then there was Greens that came, and Larbers that came, and Andersons that came, Harry Anderson down the road here. And
Before that, the first settlers were from Kentucky. And Horns, Barnetts, Bryants. They were the ones that really kind of started the white settlements here.
Interesting. There's still Barnett's in Pillager.
Oh, yeah.
There's still pizzas in Pillager.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
well, wasn't that Bryant's that the Indians kidnapped their kids?
Yeah. Yeah, there was, we got a handwritten account of a guy that was kidnapped by 7 Indian women when he was a boy. And they had him for 5 hours, just 2 miles northwest of there. They took him up into the birch woods up there, and they took turns. He said he had blue eyes. They'd never seen that before. So they kept looking into his blue eyes to see what was kind of behind him or whatever. And it just, he was always kind of terrified of, not of Indian men, but Indian women after that his whole life, I guess.
Poor baby.
But yeah.
Wow. What were they? Ojibwa? Sioux? Ojibwa.
Ojibwa.
Right.
Yeah.
That makes sense for the time period. So you mentioned the settlers were from Kentucky. Is that why there was a school named the Kentucky
Yeah,
School?
North Kentucky School.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
that was just north of here, a half a mile.
'Cause my son-in-law, Brian,
Yeah.
Brian Johnson,
Yep.
knows about the Kentucky
That's his
School.
it's on his stepdad's
Yeah.
property. Yeah.
We
It's
saw
still-
it.
Yeah, that's
Oh my
right.
gosh.
It's still,
Oh, that makes sense.
that's actually the second one, but
Hmm.
the first one was right over where the boy got kidnapped that I'm talking about.
Oh my word. So do you think there are more people living here now, or were there more people living in the area back then?
It was more 100 years ago, definitely 120 years ago.
Yeah.
But it really filled up into, 40, 80, 160 acre farms.
Yep.
Young families, schoolhouses all over.
There were a lot of schoolhouses
There
here.
were,
I was really surprised to find that out.
yep.
Well, actually, at the Casino Church right across, my dad was born here, and he moved 2 miles east over by the Casino Church, and I was born over there, and all the time I was a kid, depending on which way the wind blowed from, I could hear North Kentucky, which was right up north here. Sunrise was right north of Church a mile. Fairview was over there. That's the school that you have now. And Taft was on the corner of Bruce's farm. I could hear
Wow.
4 school bells around the casino corner there. And that was one of the things I wanted to show you here. This is can you pick that up? That's the Bridgman Hall. And it's Casino, Minnesota.
Woodman Hall or Bridgman Hall?
What?
Woodman Hall.
Woodman. It was
Look
the
on the
Woodman
back.
Hall.
There you
Yeah.
go.
The back shows something.
Yeah,
to
it
that.
was the
I think
Woodman
it's the
Hall.
same thing. I'm not sure. Yeah, but it is the same thing. Wow.
The printing is on this side now.
Mhm.
And it says Casino, Minnesota, and the Bryant family were active, and the Horn family in 1888 getting a post office. Am I right on that, Bruce? Getting the post office here at Casino.
Was it a settlement? Was it a town? Considered a town? Casino?
It was considered a community. The Woodman Hall that he's talking about was the main building, There was not a store.
Mm.
You had to go to Bridgman for a store.
And where was Bridgman located?
Bridgman is right down 35 here, 2 miles.
Honey, I
And,
wish you could stay.
that's where the old road crossed the 7 Mile Creek right there. On the way
Why don't you sit?
Is there anything left there
Why don't
now?
you sit down here.
To show that it
that's
was
where
a-
the cemetery is for this area.
Ah, I
Bridgman
see.
Cemetery. And,
I've heard of it.
Yep, but there's no buildings left. There was a store and a school there.
Interesting.
Anyway, yeah.
He's gonna go find some more treasures, I think. A picture.
Oh, you probably knew my uncle Frank District.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Yep. No, we switched school. We went from Pillager to Motley. And so, yeah, I went to school with both Ray's and Frank's kids.
Oh my.
So,
Yeah. Well, Bonnie lives just north of Motley, whatever it is now with her.
I guess I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, she was married, and
Yeah,
that guy
I'll
died
hold
in a
that one.
four-wheeler accident.
Wow. Yeah.
Now that's the casino hall. That was the first casino hall, and that's made out of log. That was there until in the teens. And then in the teens, it was moved kitty corner across the corner, and that was a frame building over there. That was the casino hall. And they used that up until Dad bought the property in 1940. I was pretty young. I remember them tearing that down, the casino hall, the new casino hall, and the Pleasant Hill Church up at Leader at Pequot up there, wherever the Pleasant Hill Church was. Anyway, that church was built out of that building, Now we got a Twilliger on this picture. That's the old.
Vistra.
Oh,
Vistra.
is she? Was she?
That's Ray's daughter, right?
Oh, that's Ray's daughter. Okay.
Ah.
Well,
John's half Vistra.
pardon?
John's half Vistra.
My mom was a district.
Yeah, he knew that.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I talked to him, I gotta see this one.
That was the original, the post office
Oh my
at the
gosh.
casino.
Wow. I gotta see this one. A lot of people on there. Oh my God. Oops, upside down. Oh, that is just an awesome picture, isn't it? Look at that. Wow.
In the 1880s, it was common to always have a 4th of July celebration.
Do you know any of the people on here?
Well,
the
I
people
knew some of
related to
them
you?
where the X's are. There was Horns in there, and I'm sure there was Foxworthy's, the people that we're talking about now, that where your house came from, the
Look at that.
property where the house came off from
Oh,
up there. That okay, go ahead. I don't want. I know.
I know that
get
you've
carried
got
away.
wonderful stories, and I love stories like this. I could listen to them all day long.
Well, we got all day.
Yeah. Can you tell us about any of the hard times that you might have had while you were living in this area?
We were all poor. We didn't know it. According to today's, the way
Yeah.
things are today,
Mhm.
there was right west of the church, the first place, there was a family by the name of Riedel there, and Evelyn had 7 kids, and her husband died, and the youngest one was only 3, and they did have part of them at that time. They did have a widow pension for her a little bit, but that was all there was. And of course, as far as the township was concerned, people were too proud in those days to ever ask for anything. We just used the garden.
We all could have been on welfare,
Yeah,
even in our era. We could have been on welfare.
we could have been.
Qualified.
Oh yeah, qualified. Yeah.
I was thought the Twillagers were pretty rich. They had a pool table in their basement.
They did. I thought they were rich too.
Well, that was a new house. Too.
Yeah, it was a new house. Yeah, it was a nice house.
So what was an average day like for you as a child, Gordon? You woke up in the morning.
Well, the first thing I did when I woke up in the morning was go out to the barn, of course, help milk cows. I started milking cows by hand, actually.
How old were you?
Well, 10 years old.
Mhm.
And then we got electricity in 1947 over there. July 7th, 1947, we got electricity, and then
Wow.
Dad got a milking
memory.
machine. At that point, Dad got a milking machine.
Mhm.
And I wasn't, my aunts were school teachers, and they really wanted me to learn. And all I wanted to do was fool with old gas engines, and I had what they called a junkyard. My mother made me move it 3 times. Yeah, she made me move it 3 times. But I spent a lot of time out there, and of course, working in the garden and that type of thing.
It was work all the time, I'm sure.
Pardon?
And some fun. What did you do for fun? What kind of things did kids?
What did they do?
Mhm.
Well, the Riedel kids, the Horn kids, the Solars kids, and the Ackerson kids, we all got together and played softball. And of course, the church being right across the road, we had a pretty good ball diamond right there. And we would go swimming once in a while at night after we got done thrashing and that type of thing.
What lake?
Well, that was the worst experience I ever had in my life.
Oh no.
Yeah, but terrible. I didn't go that night. My best friend was the same age that I was, Jim Solars. And Jim Solars drowned that night in Pillager Lake, at the south end of Pillager Lake.
Oh my gosh.
He was the same age I was, and that was a very. I always did go, and the rest of us go, and we weren't good swimmers, but Arnold Riedel was with him, and his sister, and another girl, little girl from the cities. None of them could do anything, and we never went out that far. I don't know if Jim got turned around or what. He was just 15 years old.
Mm. That's a sad thing.
There's a pretty steep drop off
Yes.
on the lake.
Oh.
Yeah, Gordon.
Hmm.
Did I get that cookie jar, please?
No, Bruce can get it if they'd like a cookie. Give him some more. You go get. They want some coffee. You want some more coffee?
Oh, I'm fine.
How about
No,
a cookie?
If
Would
I
you
have
eat a
more,
cookie?
I won't sleep tonight.
I'm good.
Oh, that's half and half.
Thank you.
Bruce, get my cup is over there. With me.
Well, that's about all the specific questions that I had. One thing I don't think we talked about was, and we want this
I was born in 1936,
36.
and I guess I served on about as many boards as you could serve on. I served on the church board over 30 years,
Which
Yeah.
church is that?
Casino Assembly of
Casino,
God.
okay.
And I served on the town board. I served on the fair board, and I spent 30 years with Growing Power,
Oh.
People Security, and I was for 43 years. I was on a statewide township mutual fire insurance board for 43 years, and Minnesota Association of Co-ops. You can ask me, well, when did you stay home and do anything? And you can ask the boys. We had 3 boys, of course, and those
Yeah.
boys were like the Twilliger boys.
Everybody worked.
They worked. They finished up the chores many a night,
Yeah.
and
So you
I
had
served on
how many
every
children?
board Land O'Lakes had, from the local board to the national board. Mm-hmm.
I didn't know you were so
Yeah, I was on
famous.
the national board too.
You did a lot of things for your community, obviously.
Well, for 50 years, I did the books for the Bridgman Cemetery,
Mm-hmm.
and I never charged it. It's a township mutual,
Mm-hmm.
insurance, and I never charged the township. I donated all that, yeah,
Well, that is awesome. I know you're going to have one.
for 50 years.
Hmm. So were the kids in 4-H?
Pardon?
Were your children in the 4-H club?
Yeah,
Mhm.
4-H. But their big thing was FFA.
FFA. Yes, I know the two combine very well, don't they?
Yeah. Villager didn't have that, but Motley did. So.
Oh,
Ooh, with the Maytown Mob 4-H club down here,
Honey,
Maytown Hall.
please sit
Mhm.
down.
But then when we switched over to Motley, I
You've
think
got to sit
FFA
down.
kind of
Come on.
took over.
I want one cookie.
Well, you sit down. I'll get you a cookie.
Oh,
You sit down.
my mom's got a sweet tooth.
oh gosh. I think most moms do. I do, I know. So how many children altogether?
We had five children, and their pictures are all up
Oh,
there.
and I see your grandchild
And the
wall.
grandparents,
That is
yeah.
awesome.
But of course, we had a bad farm accident.
Oh,
Yeah, where the big hog farm is down here, our son started that on a Bear 80, and he was just 18 years old, and he started building buildings there, and he ended up with 6 barns the length of a football field. But he smothered in the hog barn in 1995. He was with 7 of his men. 5 of his men were right with him, and he got mold in his lungs, and he didn't make it.
oh,
Yeah, and he had just been featured in the Minnesota Hog Producers. He was up here and showed me the article as having the largest privately owned farrowing operation north of St. Cloud. Today he had 30 some 3,400 sows. Now there's 6,900 sows on the farm now. They supply a
started
third
that.
of the pork. There's from Fairmont, family by the name of Dick own it now, and they supply a third of the pork that goes into Austin at Hormel's. That comes right off this farm down here. And then Bruce all 3 of the boys, they all wanted to farm, and Bruce was a dairy farmer.
where's your farm?
Just a mile and a half.
Mm.
east.
If I'm up on top of my hill, I can see all 3 of the boys' farms.
Gosh, that's neat.
Kurt's right in back of Larry Jordahl over
Mhm.
here,
Mhm.
and Jeff's farm is right down here.
How nice to have them so close.
Yeah. They
That's
were all
really
right
great.
close. And then the 2 girls, one of them is in Des Moines, out Johnston, right outside of Iowa, outside of Des Moines. And the youngest daughter is in Little Falls. She's married to a pastor, and Becky is married to a doctor down there.
Does anybody else have questions that we haven't talked about yet? That
What was
would-
your wife's maiden name?
ERBE.
ERBE. Oh,
She was born. She's the 7th baby born in the Staples Hospital, and she made one move just like I ever made. She was born in Staples Hospital. Her dad had a little farm on the west side of Staples, and she made one move out here in 1958 when we got married. And I just made one move from over here, and actually I started milking cows here. This was my grandpa and grandma's farm, and I started milking cows for my grandma and my uncle in 1955 here. My uncle got hurt, and so I come over from home over there and started milking cows. And then he passed away, and the farm was put up for sale, and we were lucky enough to be able to buy it from the 11
Yeah.
children. Yeah.
wow. I always imagined living that kind of life where you're so close and stay in the same farm and the same land for so long. I've
I
never
never-
had it, but I'm envious of people that do.
My dad was born in that house right out there. He never was in the service. He never worked off the farm. I was born the same way. I was born over there, and I made 2 miles over here. Dad made 2 miles over there. Neither one of us. Fortunately, we would have liked to have got in service, but at the time, they didn't need anybody same with my dad.
So is the house you were born in still, is it still there?
This house is here over here, yeah,
Mhm.
yes.
Is that the house you were born in? The one that's right out here?
Well, I'm saying the house I was born in was over there, but really it was a mile north of Motley. 1936, if you ever watched any weather or anything like that, my dad took my mother down to my uncle's place 2 miles north of Motley because they knew the doctor could never get out here in 36.
Oh.
And so the weather was so bad. So my mother was down there until I was born. And then after I was born, then of course I come home right away, as soon as I get through the roads. Yeah.
Yes, I've heard those kind of stories.
Mhm.
So let's talk about the schoolhouse, the Fairview Schoolhouse. Where was it located?
It was located a mile south of the Casino Church and a mile east of the Casino Church and a half mile south of the Casino Church. My dad owned the land right on the side of it, but actually we'll go over and look where the house was.
Great.
And that was right on the corner of my dad's property. But my dad didn't own that. He owned, another fellow owns it now by the name of John Wiegert. And there was 9 schools in District 23. And I knew every, in fact, my aunts that lived here, 2 of them, they taught in 7 of the 9 schools.
My gosh. Well, you had an educated family if they could become teachers. Although I know it didn't take much in those
Well, my
days.
wife, she quit teaching the day before we got married. And she never went back to teaching. She had her hands full just
I'm sure.
raising a
Just-
family and
and
whatnot.
running a household. You're right.
Yeah.
And when was the church, the school built, the Fairview School? When was
Well,
it built?
The North Kentucky. And Bruce, you talk about the North Kentucky. I got pictures.
Mention a little bit about that. Yeah, there was 2 of them, and this one up here is the second North Kentucky schools. But as far as what did you say it's called? again?
Fairview.
Fairview. Yeah, I don't know anything about that one. It's older than Taft. You said Taft was the newest one, and so I would guess it was probably in the teens or 20s.
18. Well, the only thing I know for sure is that 1888, the log school was born, North Kentucky up here.
Yeah, that was.
And the new one is sitting up here yet. It's,
Mhm.
We'll see that when we go by.
And
We'll
that's
go by
white.
north, and you will
That's-
see a schoolhouse sitting off the road up there,
Yep.
on top of the hill. And that's on Ed Gustafson's farm. And that new one, my grandpa moved down, and around 1900, the school was here then. At that time, in fact, I got the records out there that grandpa had 7 children in 8 grades there. But the way that worked, the older boys, of course, the first 5 children were just a year apart. But what I'm saying is the older boys, they only went to school in the wintertime for a couple, 3 months. The rest of the time, they worked on the farm all the time.
Mm-hmm. And which school did they go to?
They all went to North Kentucky
North
right
Kentucky. Okay.
here.
So there were 9 schools in the area.
Yep, 9 schools in
And how many
District
miles?
23, actually from 64 over here to number 1.
Okay.
Well, Fairview was the most easternly school, and about 2 miles west of here was the most westerly one.
And that's right along the highway.
No, that would be a mile this side of Highway 64.
Okay.
And then it went all the way to the railroad tracks on the south. District 23 did.
I see.
And the most northerly school was North Kentucky and Sunrise up
Mhm.
here.
So I was driving along the road one day looking for,
Highway 34.
yeah,
Yeah.
34. And there's what looks to be a foundation
Yes,
of an old school.
no, it's a church,
A church.
the Lutheran church.
I didn't
Yeah.
even know that.
Yeah, and that moved into Motley, and that church is still going. They've got a new brick building now.
Because I
That-
kept
I'm right on that,
imagining.
right, Dad?
Yeah, that what Lutheran Church in '52 they closed that out in the country there
Yeah.
and moved into town.
Because the
Mhm.
bare, just
But
seeing the
a
foundation
mile-
like that
Yeah.
was, I
Yeah,
wondered.
Now, the schoolhouse on my corner over here got moved up to Pleasant Hill, and that just got taken down in the last few months.
they used it as a
That was
parsonage.
the parsonage at
Oh,
Pleasant Hill.
yes. I've seen that one then.
I just, for the first time, noticed it was gone the last time I went by there. I don't get that way too often.
Well, if there was a good building, they didn't tear it down.
Yeah.
They were going to find another use for it.
Yeah.
That was one of the newer schools, and I getting back to when that Fairview School was built. All I know was the first maps that I've got between there was no highway between Highway 10 at that time, back in the 18. That was 1890s. First map I got. There was no Highway 10 between Motley and Pillager. There was a trail that followed it along the railroad tracks. That was what they
Oh.
used.
Mhm.
And then you go north of Motley on 64, about a half mile. Bruce, I might be wrong. But there was a road that went to the east there and across the Mosquito Creek.
Mhm.
And that meandered right at that trail in 1890, went right up through and went right past where the Fairview School is. So that
Oh.
I have a feeling, I have called several people about the history of that Fairview School. And Don Weigel actually come the closest, and his mother taught there, but he really didn't know any history either. But there had to have been a school, a log school there before they built that newer, the one you have now, because that school that you have now,
That's a frame building.
that's a
Yes.
frame building, and
Mhm.
all those buildings they were all built about 1900. There was a lumber yard in Motley. I was told by Ed Gustafson up here, and he seemed to know a lot about that history. Too bad you wouldn't have got his view. And he told me that the lumber yard in Motley furnished the lumber, and there's a contractor in Motley that built most of these frame.
Mhm.
When they took the log school out, and the old log school, Bruce, where was the log school? First North Kentucky.
Yeah, I was probably the last person that actually saw the foundation for it, because somebody came through there not too long ago and took all the stones out.
Hmm.
They didn't know what it was, I'm sure.
Hmm.
Yeah, that was just about 2.5 miles northwest of here, 2 miles north, as the crow flies, I would say.
Hmm.
But then they moved it over here. I think the schools kind of followed the population kids.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Doesn't
and
it? Hmm.
So yeah, that's why they would pop up and be going strong, and then as it aged out right around it, sometimes they would close them or move them. Or
So were all the schools built as well as the Fairview School?
They were all built similar. All the frame schools. I think Sunrise had the biggest one.
Ah.
In fact, in 1947, you look in. We had 5 graduates, five kids between the Horns and Appelsheimer's and the Blomstroms and the Solars and the Riedels. There was 5 of them, and they went to Pillager and graduated. And I think Pillager only graduated about 13 in the whole school district. Casino back in those days was a very big school because, there was a lot of
Sunrise.
all the way from the Twilliers up there through to Casino. that's all timber country. And those people, how'd they make a living? Cutting railroad ties and haul them to Motley for groceries.
Mhm.
And that was kind of, so there was survival
Mhm.
with those people.
That's
That
how
right
it was
there
in
is the
Nisswa too.
bell tower for the Sunrise School. My daughter painted it.
Oh, that is so neat.
It's just the front of it. The schoolhouse, so you can see is back there going backwards.
Oh, sure.
And what I think is interesting is there's old schoolhouses and stories like this all over the countryside. And they're leaving us fast. And the people that knew about them. So our goal is to start getting some of this history down and recorded, especially concerning those two buildings.
Have you had the Cass County book?
I have seen the Cass County book.
You've seen the Cass
Mhm.
County book. I probably put 6 or 8 articles in there. And one of them was on schools. And I listed pretty much every school
Mhm.
that was in District 23 that I knew about.
So when was that? When was that book published? And were there other books, or
It was published, I would say, about 20 years ago.
I would say
Yep.
that's right. Yeah.
I do remember seeing it
And
someplace.
mine right now, Don Gilson's got my book. Otherwise, I would show it to you.
Mhm.
But that's got some really good history on schools and churches. And we had a county commissioner in Pillager, Mel Heim at the time, and there was somebody else that worked with him quite a bit. Might have been Johnny Lee or somebody else. And they went up to Walker and they had a lot of input into that.
So it says on this nice paper that you gave us here with a picture of the house that Jack Madden bought the house in 56. Did he buy the schoolhouse at the same time?
Yes. Mhm.
And how did he find out about them?
Well, just Jack Madden, when I was a kid, we sold a lot of lumber to Jack Madden.
I see.
And we had the sawmill, and Jack Madden was building up there and he was making furniture. Jim Madden was helping him. They were building furniture and that type of thing. And so that might have been part of it. Dad might have hauled a load of lumber up there and told him that I've got a house that was built back in. I wish I knew if I could someday. I might find the abstract to that property, but Dad didn't buy the property. All I know is the Foxworthys came up here in the 1800s, and as far as I know, the house was there then. I don't know if they built it or not. They were there until 1920, and in 1920, her folks were in Missouri, and they were going to go back down and take. So my dad's oldest brother, which was farming right here with the family, Grandpa had died by then, and he was farming, and so he married this Hazel Foxworthy, and of course she was the grand niece, or however that figures out, to Abraham Lincoln.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And that was in that house, house, and so that was and then at that point in 1920, the house was sold to a family by the name of Rogers, and Rogers had the house, and my dad bought the house, bought the farm. Then in 1951, Dad bought the house farm, and then he'd had it for a year or two, and then
Nobody lived in it then. It was just
oh
an
yeah,
empty
there
house,
was a
or-
family by the name of Allen that was in there, and into the house, yeah.
Wow.
But they was about Harold Allen. They were about the last ones that lived in there. After we got it in 51, there was nobody ever lived in there.
So then the log cabin also
The
was
log what?
sold. The log cabin in the house.
Well, yeah, that
Was
was
also-
a house.
You
Yeah.
owned that when
Yes.
Madden's bought it.
We owned that house.
Yeah.
Dad,
Huh.
Dad,
I didn't know that.
Dad owned that house,
Neat.
And we'll look at where it sat over there.
Great. Yeah.
And it sat on some rocks. That's where it sat. I went over there yesterday and I found a hole. Underneath there's a hole there about half as big as this room. And that was what they call a cellar. And I don't know, is there still a trapdoor in that house?
No idea.
But anyway,
I'm
that
trying
was
to think.
the way
it's-
they got down in the cellar.
It's a 2-room house. There's a fireplace in it. I'll look.
That's how they got down in the basement
Sure.
into the cellar, was through the trapdoor. And when Dad sold them the house, they came down, the movers came down, and they should have opened that trapdoor and went down in the basement, because there's a hole there and it's not cemented out, or might have been rocked out a little bit, but it wasn't cemented out. And it kind of goes up like this, and there was timbers going up like that, falling into the floor joists up there. And they went in there and started jacking that house, and those logs were good. But when they started jacking it, they didn't take the nails out of that. They started lifting that crate down in the cellar there, and it pulled some of this stuff apart here. So that's when
Yeah.
they decided they had to take it, do some other things with the house.
Well, it's just amazing that they got saved, the school and the house.
And
Well,
they
Dad, I think
kept up the way I understand. I'm anxious to go up and see it now, I guess.
Oh, please do
Yeah.
come sometime.
I'll do
We're
that.
we're all so proud of the buildings that we have. The president before me, his name was Mr. Carlson, Dick Carlson, and he gave his heart and soul and many thousands of dollars to that place. We're all kind of getting into that too. We really appreciate those buildings. But Mr. Carlson used to say, it's like taking care of a small city. It is. The roofs need fixing.
Yep.
I now know how to chink a log cabin. I
See,
didn't
my-
want to learn that, but
my first cousin, that was her mother's house, her mother and dad.
so Carrie
Yeah.
Van Sickle,
Yeah,
at one time, is this the
yep,
house that
that's
Van
the same
Sickles
house
lived
that, when the Foxworthys left here, the Rogers bought the place.
in? Mhm.
And that's then my dad bought it from the Rogers. But this was Avis, my first cousin, that wrote this all out for
Okay.
me. Mhm.
So what years would Carrie Van Sickle have lived in it?
She would have lived in it from 1920, until off and on. Some say they didn't know how much she ever did live in it. Van Sickle, was it? Yeah,
Carrie Van
Carrie,
Sickle.
but she was Carrie Rogers.
Yes.
But I don't know. I don't know much about that.
Would that have been way earlier?
Oh no! It was after. It was after 1920,
That was
Okay.
Harry's wife.
and now Carrie was born maybe 1900.
I don't know. We have that someplace,
Dad
but
was born in 1904, but I think Carrie. I don't know exactly. Harry Rogers was older than my dad, and Harry was the one that my dad dealt with when he bought
Okay.
the place.
because I know she was a twin.
Yeah. But she would have, if she would have lived there, she would have lived there sometime between 1920 and probably 1930.
Okay.
That's my idea, and I think I'm pretty close on that.
Was this ever called the Van Sickle house?
No, it was always the Foxworthy house. It was always Foxworthy's. Yeah.
Because I know that when it was at Madden's, it was called the Van Sickle cabin.
Oh, is that right?
Yes.
Well, that's because she named it that.
I now am knowing that. Yes.
She,
I now understand.
Carrie Rogers, Carrie.
All right.
She named it. There's some.
I
I
get it.
won't go there.
I understand.
go there
You don't
because
even
there's-
have to go there.
There's some stories
I
about
got
that,
it.
even if she ever lived there.
That's kind of what it sounded like. We have the correct name.
Oh, well, thank you for clearing it all up because it's been the most confusing thing.
Yeah.
There was also a Van Sickle house supposedly on the west shore of Gull Lake.
Mm-hmm.
Was
That was Milt's, Milt Van Sickle.
Yeah, that,
Yeah.
the Van
All
Sickles,
right.
yeah, that's
Yep,
where
yep,
they
yep,
came
yep.
from up there. Yeah.
And so it was always so confusing. But yeah, I can understand how that would have happened. Yeah.
My nephew has the abstract, I'm sure, and I need to look in that abstract.
So we'd be
And-
calling that house the Foxworthy house from now on, people. Oh, that's
Well, the Foxworthys was here from 1920 to
so we don't know who built it.
from 1900. No, I don't know who built that house.
It was
But,
just there when
for sure, if Foxworthy, they came in 20 and they left in, or they came in the turn of the century and they left in 1920. Let me get that right. They left in 1920. And I would say they built that house. I don't know if they built it or if, I gotta look on the abstract.
yeah, that,
Foxworthy, they came in 20 and they left in, or they came in the turn of the century and they left in 1920. Let me get that right. They left in 1920. And I would say they built that house. I don't know if they built it or if, I gotta look on the abstract.
yeah, that would be interesting. And you have my information, my contact information. We would love to know that.
And who owned that property
Hmm.
before 1900, just exactly who owned it, I don't know.
One of the reasons we're trying to find this out is because when people come through our little pioneer village, a lot of them ask, are these houses original? Are they from here? And I say they are original, but they are not from here. They were
They're
moved
not what?
in. They're not original to where they're at now.
Oh,
They
yeah.
weren't originally built
Well,
where they are
you'll
now.
find out the basement. I went over there yesterday, and we'll walk
Yes.
in and show you where the basement was. There's some trees and stuff.
So I know that the people that come through the village would love to see pictures of where these buildings were from. So that's what we want to do.
I wish, and I thought I've looked in my I got as many Martin albums as anybody. Yeah, all kinds of. We're having a reunion now, and but anyway, what I'm saying is, there is a picture someplace of my mother and dad standing alongside of that old house when Mom and Dad had it.
Okay.
But I haven't never located it.
But you remember.
But I used to go in there and go upstairs and stuff
Mhm.
when I was a kid.
Sure. Check out the old abandoned
Yeah.
place.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else? Can
You
you
want
think
some
of
more
anything
coffee?
else? I'm good. If I have more, I won't sleep tonight.
That's
I'm not
half
used to
and half.
coffee.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Anybody else want some coffee? What about a cookie? Have a cookie.